Diablo fans? Hey, I wanted to present to you guys my take on the ZDPS monk and explain why I think it is the best crowd control ZDPS build in the entire game. Then show you the build and how exactly it works. Now, first and foremost, this isn't a solo play character, it is a multiplayer character. I can't do any damage, I'm only here solo just to demonstrate the crowd control and how well it works. You can pretty much pull everything in a tight ball, lock it into place, everything's more or less perma CC'd. The only thing I cannot do is prevent enemy affixes, as you can see. That's an honor bestowed pretty much solely for the Lockdock Witch Doctor. Alright? Now, obviously, yes, this is console. We had a Nemesis coming. So for the PC Master Race, I do apologize. Look, the equipment and the skills are going to be exactly the same. I do know it's a finicky interface for you, but follow along, it is the same. If you want to click thumbs down and hate on a console, or so be it. However, I'm new to making YouTube videos, so I'd much rather get the constructive criticism. Whatever. Anyway, now a ZDPS character is evaluated amongst a few things. One, not only is this kind of ultimate crowd control, but I'm not putting any damage out, so I have to be able to help the team compensate for that. Now with this build, I can help buff the team's damage by up to 195%. 195%. That's phenomenal. That's astronomical. But I do say up to 195% because I'm not running with it fully optimized like that, and you probably won't either. However, it is an option within the build, and we'll discuss that. Not only can we help the team put out a lot more damage, but we can also prevent the damage that they're taking. We can optimize this to prevent up to 75% of the damage that our teammates are taking, also give them an extra 40% resist all to buff their toughness, and give them a massive life per second increase based upon our own, which isn't really quantifiable. That's depend on your equipment and your gem leveling, but suffices to say it's a pretty astronomical life per second boost to keep them in the fight. So, my build. Alright, let's first talk about the equipment. One of the first things we need to discuss is this, the Inna set. This is one of the reasons that the monk is so phenomenal. 2.2, it got a buff. Discuss that buff. The 2-set bonus, we don't really care about Mystic Ally, but the base passive effect of mantras being increased by 100% is huge, because that's going to synergize with the 4-set bonus. Gain the base effects of all 4 mantras at a time, at all times. If you're not familiar with the Inna's passives, you can see them right here. Mana of Conviction, nearby enemies take increased damage. In this case, it's 20% more damage. Mantra of Salvation, resist all elements is increased. That's 40% for the entire team. Mantra of Retribution, blocking, dodging, or getting hit causes damage to attackers, kind of a Thorns attribute. 202% of your total weapon damage isn't much, but every little bit helps. And Mantra of Healing, your life regeneration is increased, in this case 60% of my total. Now, before we talk too much else about equipment, take a look at the toughness. 132 million unbuffed, with resistances sitting all between 22 and 2300 for the most part, with the exception of a lightning that spiked. And my life per second at 100 almost 70,000. Buffed, however,
not ready yet.
I jumped to 265 million. My resistance to elements does not change, but my life per second does jump astronomically. Alright? So now, basically, whenever you take a look at the skills, in a sets, we don't have to equip a mantra for this to work. I've tested this pretty substantially. You're going to get all 4 mantras, and the base effect is going to be increased by all for that 2 and 4 set bonus. Now, because we are ZDPS, you want to roll the equipment defensive stats. Same thing with your helm, and with the belt. Helm, you're going to need a diamond in for cooldown. Alright, other things that we want to run, we want a Born Sword and Born Shoulders. Reason is we're looking for the 3-set bonus there. We're further reducing our cooldown. The 15% life also helps with toughness. For the shoulders, you need to make sure that they have cooldown reduction. Other than that, defensive stats are what you're looking for. For the sword, again, it has to have cooldown, and then the defensive stats. Now, for those of you that don't know, alright, all discussion of offense aside, Dex and Strength are both going to do the exact same thing for our armor rating. Every point of Dex or Strength is going to be 1 point of armor, so whether we run Dex gear or Strength gear is completely interchangeable. int gear, for every 10 points of intelligence, we get 1 point of resist all. So if you're not very high up with your resistance to elements, you might want to throw some intelligence pieces of gear in. I think I have the one ring that's intelligence. Anyway, so don't be afraid to mix and match the different attributes. So that's the Born set. The gloves are the St. Archie's Gauge. This is a legacy pair. They're defensive. The new pair have a different absorb shield, but the end effect of both is the same, defensive. If you don't have St. Archie's Gauge, you are probably going to run the Stone Gauntlets because they immobilize on hits. Frostburns could be worn, but we've already got skills that are going to freeze, so it's somewhat superfluous. Strong arm bracers you absolutely want to have, best in slot for the knockback all source damage there, 20 to 30%. Obviously, the higher the better. You saw Cyclone Strike in the beginning when I was pulling enemies. As long as you see an animation, i.e. they get pulled in on you, or whenever you recast they jump, then you are proccing that knockback. So they're going to take extra damage for the next 30 seconds. However, there are some big enemies, such as Mallet Lords and Guardians, that won't get pulled, so they're not going to take any damage buff. If you don't have strong arms, Ancient Parthen Defenders are good, but again, you want the strong arms, best in slot. All right. Whoa, what happened here? Sledge Fist is best in slot for your weapon. The reason is this has up to a 50% chance to stun. Again, we need cooldown on this. You can go ahead and giggle at the damage. I actually rolled off the damage to have resource cost reduction and cooldown, dex fight, life per hit. Notice I have purple gems in both weapons for life per hit. That leaves the boots and the pants, Captain Crimson's. Again, the chest piece and the boots have diamonds. Captain Crimson's is for the cooldown. However, the resist all, the life per second, and the resource cost all benefit this build. For the Ami, I have Star of Azkarinth on. Now, whenever I Cyclone Strike and pull everything in on me, I'm pretty much immobilized. I can't go anywhere until my teammates kill them off. So the on-death explosion of some minions, the big fireball, it's pretty hard, and it's about the only thing that was killing me. So Star of Azkarinth was my answer to that. However, if you're not aware, Star of Azkarinth is the rarest item in the game. So if RNG hasn't blessed you, then any immunity amulet will work. In addition to immunity amulets, this thing will work well. It doesn't proc too often, but it is factored in that up to 195% damage. Anybody you charm, well, that's charmed specifically by the amulet, will take an additional 35% damage. It's a pretty big damage buff. Ring of Royal Grandeur you have to have. You want to sock it, you need cooldown on it at a minimum. Defensive stats otherwise, and then Rogar's Huge Stone. This is a defensive gem. It'll up to double your life per second based on how much you're missing, so the closer you get to dead is the more it's going to increase your life per second up to that blue stat. Now, if you don't have a Rogar's Huge Stone, or if you would prefer, check this out. It is, in my opinion, a way overpowered multiplayer ring. I've got a whole nother video on it on my channel. Check it out. It'll explain why. But this is a phenomenal multiplayer damage buff ring. For the legendary gems I'm running, Esoteric Alteration is a no-brainer. Almost everything at the higher griff levels is elemental damage, so the higher you have this leveled is the more it's going to affect your toughness. I've also got the Molten Wildebeest. Again, mine's 60 or level 61, so that's a big life per second boost. But also that 25 affix gain absorb shield, 200% of your total LPS. That is a huge dampener for those really big hard hits that might otherwise one-hit kill you. Lastly, I've got the Gem of Infectious Toxin. I really don't care about the poison damage over time. I care more about that 25 affix. Anybody that I've hit or Cyclone Striked in does some kind of damage to or touched will get a 10% increased damage all sorts. So everybody on your team's dealing more damage to them. Skills, this is why we care so much about cooldown as Epiphany. We want this to be up 100% of the time. You have to run Desert Shroud as the damage reduction rune on it. Cyclone Strike, there's two you can run. I recommend Implosion as a rune because it pulls from a much wider radius. You can do Wall of Wind because it'll freeze stuff as you pull it in. We've got another freeze skill anyway. Implosion's much better crowd control. Need to wait for that cooldown to wear off. Alright, Blinding Flash, again, there's two runes you can use, and this is going to depend on what other characters you have in the group. If you're running with Witch Doctor Wizard or only DPS characters that are standoffish, you're going to want to use this rune, Self-Reflection. It's going to basically perma-blind. The other rune I have selected there will not perma-blind, however we've got so much CC going on that it's going to be perma-CC regardless. But self-reflection is much better if you don't have any of your friends in melee range. If you do have friends in melee range, barbarians, Roland satyrs, etc., you're going to want to use this rune. Basically, if you have a friendly within the effect of blinding a flash, then they're going to get 26k plus 90% of your total life per second life regen, which is just huge to keep them in the fight. And that's on top of the 60% that they're already getting from your mantra. Right, you notice I don't have mantras on here. If I did, this is where I would normally have it slotted. However, as I already explained, it's not necessary. So we're running Exploding Palm. You won't get that big grandeur, explosion whenever enemies die like you would with an offensive monk. But here we really only care about the Flesh's Weak rune. We're going to selectively target elites and Rift Guardians with it. Give them the little red palm above their head, and as long as that red palm's there, they're taking 20% more all-source damage. Inner Sanctuary. What did I do here? There we go. Okay, this is important to us for two reasons. One is that base skill. Again, melee characters, anybody within range of that rune, that circle you see on the ground there, they're going to take 55% less damage. Big buff for the team. Furthermore, Forbidden Palace, the only rune that we want to run, any enemies within that rune are taking 30% more damage and also having their movement speed reduced by 80%. Lastly, that leaves us with Crippling Wave, which is primary, so it's a spirit regen. Two different runes that you can run. First, I'm going to discuss Breaking Wave. I don't recommend this, and this is why. It does 10% additional all-source damage anybody you hit, but it's a very small radius attack. Alright, you're primarily only hitting the person in front of you. Whereas, if I equip Tsunami, it doesn't increase the damage, but it does freeze everybody every third hit. You can see how massive that damage radius is, 360 around you. That will allow me to stun everybody as well. I'm hitting so many people with that stun fist, 50% chance to stun. That's basically stunning and freezing everybody around me. Casting blind at the same time, and now I'm stunned, blind, lock, and slow. And there's our slow and our extra damage as well. Just a massive radius effect for everybody around. For the passives, we have to have Beacon of Ytar for the cooldown. Sixth Sense and Harmony are required for the elemental resist. Last is an optional. Some people prefer near-death experience. It's your respawn if you screw up and die. However, I prefer Resolve. I don't die very often, especially with other satyrs or barbarians on the group, further buffing my toughness. I can withstand most enemy assaults. So I would prefer throw Resolve on and further reduce the amount of damage that my team's taking. That way they can stay in the fight and continue to dish out the damage to beat the clock. If I do die, it's going to be so infrequent that I'm going to have a very low cooldown timer, because here on console we can't revive each other, so I'm going to be able to get back in the fight quick enough. PSN locks us at 15 minutes. I'm going to have to stop this video here and start a part 2 where I will discuss Paragons.